you. Welcome to the Career Wanderlust podcast, your compass for new career horizons. Today, we are talking with Fred Bateman. Fred is a serial agency entrepreneur who has been refining his craft of technology focused strategic communication for more than 30 years. Currently, he is the CEO and founder of fast growing PR and content marketing company Bateman Agency, where his talented team helps tech companies realize their ultimate success. Fred is also best known as the sole founder and CEO from 2003 to 2020 of Bateman Group, one of the most award-winning, fastest-growing tech PR agencies in the last 10 years. Under his leadership, Bateman Group became known as the industry innovator and the tech agency of choice for disruptive startups and market leaders alike. Fred is now on his way to doing the same with the Bateman Agency. And I am excited to learn more. Fred, thank you so much for joining us on the Career Wanderlust podcast.
Thanks, Jolie. Great to see you, and thanks for having me.
Oh, it's so great to have you and see your face. It's wonderful. And Fred, you have a wonderful career in the communications industry, not only working with other leading agencies as you moved your way up through the ranks to the highest level, and then starting your own agency, making that a success, starting another agency, which is, I hear, winning some fast growing awards as well. So I would love to know, I mean, through all of your career, what has been some of the key advice that has kept you going and being successful? What's made the most impact for you?
I've always had a very strong affinity for people that work in this industry. I recall back when I went to Boston College. I grew up in Boston, very much a Boston street kid. From a single family, single parent home, and went through Jesuit Catholic schools were sort of my path out of
Mhm.
poverty. A way.
Okay.
I went to an all-boy Jesuit high school called Boston College High School, which was very academically rigorous, and then Boston College, which is certainly not an easy college to get into either, and
Mhm.
all in academic scholarships. So I was always,
Great.
as a child of divorce, I think there's always one child that like sort of goes overachieving, and then like brother sort of the opposite, or and the rebel. So I was very much like the peacekeeper, back
Mhm.
then, and I think it's something that served me well growing up without money, and that has helped me navigate the business world in a way that I think certain attributes that I'm known for are still with me today. I've known for being
Mm,
like extremely generous, extremely
mm.
empathetic, and kind. And that's what I'm most proud of, is that I've maintained that reputation through all 35 years that I've been working
I love.
in this business. Always a fair and friendly competitor, very close with my other agency competitor owners. I love to
Mm,
network with them and talk shop, and I celebrate other successes even when they beat us in new business. And I've always tried to make a community within
mm.
tech PR, whether I was in Boston or San Francisco or LA, which I did for a couple of years when I was with Fitzgerald. And I think that having the sort of goodwill of the marketplace behind me at many different points in my career really created a gust of wind in my sails
Right.
at both Bateman Group and now at Bateman Agency, of people who want to see Fred Bateman succeed, which is nice.
Right. Right.
Yeah, I've tried not to burn many bridges over the years. I've realized that's not possible, that there's going to always be a few that do get burned. And I've run into, I'll be honest, a lot of homophobia, and anti-gay stuff.
Mm.
I just
Still.
didn't recognize it. For
Mhm.
a long time, I thought it was just my personality or
Say.
sad, or bad advice I give. But I know it's still very much a problem that as I've gotten older, I've been more vocal about talking with PR trades or whoever industry organizations. It's just under the surface in the
Yeah.
tech industry. But I definitely have faced a lot of that
And how do
where,
you deal with that when you are faced with it?
well, there's a couple ways it manifests. Sometimes I think being just known as a gay-owned agency, or agency led by an openly gay man, especially as I've gotten to middle age and I'm single still and I don't have
Yeah.
kids with a surrogate, like, the good gays who follow, which it seems ridiculous, but those who of course fought hard for those rights too. And I
Yeah.
just cards haven't been dealt to me that way. I was always too focused on work and building companies to really put much
That's just
effort into it.
silly. It goes along with the whole, like, you're not worthy unless you have children or what have you. I just think that's silly. I just wanna say that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But I think I went from like Rupert Everett gay best friend meme
Yeah.
to like kind of it's creepy and predatory
Oh,
and like,
no.
like, why isn't, is one person not enough for him? There's a lot of people that just kind of fill in the blanks when they don't know what's going on with your personal life that shouldn't have anything to do with how you perform in business. If anything, I thought it was,
Completely.
but that's reserved for single women who are middle aged, not single gay men. So,
Yeah, people
but
forget that there's a lot of ways to live life, and you know what? There are thousands and thousands of ways to live your very best life. So,
and you can
anyway.
be happy, without having
Exactly.
children necessarily, or even being in a relationship. And,
Exactly.
and that was definitely something I feel like I face a lot is that other, heterosexuals in the business and assume that if you don't follow their path to marriage and kids, that something must be wrong with you, or you eventually will have a mental breakdown of some
Mhm.
kind. But in terms of business, I'll rein it in back to like, building an agency and how it can be an obstacle when you're gay. There's times where we have a CMO who really wants to hire us, knows we've got the most domain experience in their sector, really loves the team, likes me too, and respects my advice, which isn't always a given. But then he's concerned about how I'll mesh with the CEO who might, be
Mm,
not
gotcha.
openly homophobic, but, you know, sort of avoid being around gay men or just
Gotcha.
not wanting to take advice or counsel from a gay man.
Mhm.
It's different when you have gay people on your staff and they report to you, but if they're looking at me as a peer, it can get in the way. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
And I think that what I used to do is fade into the background and push my heterosexual, you know, coworkers and peers that helped me building the agency to the
Mhm.
front. And I realized that approach doesn't work well in the long term either, because then
Mhm.
there's sort of issues of credit and like who really was the one to bring in that business and realizing that I didn't fade to the background because of my performance, because of my sexuality. You know what I
Right.
mean? So,
Yeah.
like as I look back over my career, I realized that when I was working for other people's agencies, it was never an issue and I never felt restrained by it. But with my own companies, I have.
Mhm.
It's been something that a bigger obstacle than I was willing to admit until
Mhm.
very
Do you now just decide not to work with those types of companies?
well. Sometimes you don't know until you've actually
Yeah.
won the client, onboarded, or you've gotten past
Right.
those obstacles that were preventing us from getting hired. Like, I can sense when if a CEO or a CMO just doesn't like me for no reason, like a lot of times I
Mhm.
do give them a reason or tell them things they don't want to hear, which is part of the job.
Part of the job.
I But if they're hostile to me for no reason, I sense that there's an issue, and I will rearrange the team so that there's somebody that they're more comfortable with. As senior lead, I've got a great deep bench with Rachel Cassidy and Tara Klein, two people that I worked with both at Bateman Group and for many, many years. Tara and I back to 1993 in Boston. And there's others on my senior team that are sometimes a better fit for a
Mhm.
CMO or CEO. But this with the second agency, I've been thrilled that there's been some CEOs that have not cared at all about
Yeah.
me being very involved in the accounts. In fact, they really respect my deep tech knowledge, my passion for technology, which I think is another thing that's really driven me all these years. To get back to your original question, is I always dreamed of having my own agency, even ever since I started the Weber Group in 1991. And I wanted it to be the agency that all the coolest companies wanted to work with, all the
Mhm.
hottest brands, and where all the most talented people would come to work and never leave. And so I did build that. I just should have been really more specific in my dream about
I bet
what that
I
looks like.
bet being able to build that, I bet what you talked about in the very beginning, how you were saying that you have always been, very empathetic and caring and kind and have run your companies and run your teams and work with your clients in that way. I would imagine that that right there has allowed you to go again and build another agency that is now successful and find amazing clients to work with you and have retention that is strong in an industry that struggles with retention.
Yeah, no, and as you know from being a recruiter, it was always really hard to get anyone from Bateman Group, or I hope Bateman Agency. It's
It,
only
it's
been
actually how we started working with you, to be honest with you. I remember my recruiter was like, I cannot get anyone to leave the Bateman agency. We need to work with them. And that's when we reached out
that's
to
so
work with you.
flattering. That is so flattering. Yeah, no, I was always really proud of our retention rates. It was a very long time where Bateman Group was a beautiful, fabulous, wonderful place to work for everybody, maybe but me. and
Which happens for the leader a lot.
sometimes, yeah, yeah. And I think those values of empathy as a retention tool aren't really talked about back then. I mean,
Mm,
that's something that you read a lot about in the last 5 years, but back in the knots and even the early 2000 teens, it wasn't really considered a management tool or
no.
strategy. And I felt it was just so powerful in terms of being
Mm,
able to retain and get people invested and making them feel special and heard and like they have a voice. And I've tried to take it a step further with this new agency and really have found it around not only those principles, but also salary transparency for all employees.
great.
Very new. And it's funny because I know we're the only agency that really does it to this degree, where the P&L is available to any employee at any time. I always let everybody know where the profits are and where they're going and why. And there's none of the secrecy and agendas about
Mhm.
the profits. I feel like this new model of salary transparency and equal pay for equal work. I mean, all the people at the same titles have the same salary for the most part within a very tiny, tiny range. And I think that I'd never go back. I would never go back to hiding the ranges again or negotiating with candidates behind closed doors or bringing someone in higher because we thought we might lose them to another agency only to have them not perform as well as we thought. All those
No,
things.
it's fascinating. I think this is great. The complete because transparency is the name of the game, and that is a very big deal right now in culture. Candidates want transparency, but this is new. This level of transparency that you're saying that everything is open, like even everyone's salaries, all of that. I think that's very interesting, and that's been working well for you. Yes.
Radical transparency.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, like, radical candor. But I think it's at first a little bit, I mean, I've always been, as a person, very radically candid, which is sometimes a little tough for people to get used to. You know what I mean? And not in an offensive way, but in a way that I can't keep the secret for longer than 5 minutes unless I forget it, which happens more frequently. Of course, I can for like announcement under NDA or
I
whatever.
gotta be honest. I think a lot of these personality things may come from the Catholic upbringing, if I'm honest. Guilt, having to,
Yeah.
can't keep a secret. You have to confess. We have to confess. I grew
Infectious.
up I grew up
Yeah,
Catholic
yeah.
as well. So these were things that have plagued me that I had to overcome in my much older age.
Yeah, no, it's funny. I was always say if I had a memoir, I would call it "The Best Little Catholic Boy in Greater
Yeah.
Boston," because I was definitely the one who did the Station of the Cross and was very, like, committed. And over the course of my life, I've realized, God, what was I doing? I was committing myself so much to being so perfect at a religion that would never accept me as a gay man,
Right.
as once I discovered my sexuality. So now I'm an atheist. I mean, the full
The journey. Journey.
yeah, yeah. But I think if you ask, we recently did an employee satisfaction survey for the first time at the end of 2023. And I was very pleased to see that these experiments, if you will, the empathy or empathetic type leadership has always been there with both agencies. I think the people before profits and relationships before revenue is the carryover. But it's nice to see that the radical transparency that we're experimenting with is also contributing to a very high employee satisfaction and agency
Great.
experience metric score. So
Great. That's fantastic. That's a huge win. So Fred, I'm curious 'cause I know you have a lot of stories. I know you have a lot of stories.
I know where the bodies are buried everywhere.
What what's one that was an impactful lesson for you? Something that happened in your work that you really learned something from and hearing it to benefit other people because they can learn this lesson by hearing the story.
You mean for me, my personal career or for like business
Yeah.
building or both?
Either your personal career, either one, whatever comes to mind.
Well, as an agency owner, much faster to terminate. I was always afraid during my first business venture. I never initiated a termination of anybody. I would work
Okay.
around people's deficits for 20 years and
Mhm,
never say anything
mhm,
because I was just so grateful to have anybody who wanted to help me build it. I didn't,
mhm.
it was that I just wanted it to succeed, Bateman Group to succeed at any cost. If I could be convinced to cut off an arm that it would help the company succeed, I would have probably considered it, for a minute. I was that insecure as an entrepreneur and as a business leader that I would just want to keep the team in place. I never thought about whether there was people that would later become toxic or do me harm. And my business partners seem to enjoy it. Terminating people a lot more than
Well,
me. So
you
I
it
let
sounds
able to
yeah.
pull.
Yeah,
Those are
I'm
I've now had to take that onto myself when we've made some poor hiring choices with Bateman Agency, even in the 4 years that we've been in existence. Just, there's very high standards for excellence that I don't even set. It comes from the rest of
Mhm.
the team, that
Mhm.
that certain people couldn't reach. Been a lot more involuntary churn this agency
It sounds like you're
than
keeping strong boundaries in your own company is what you're doing.
I'm recognizing when someone's not a long-term fit a lot
Yeah.
faster and moving fast, where before I would
Yeah.
give eighth, ninth, 10th chances, to people and
Yeah.
just be grateful they were there. So that was a hard lesson as a naturally kind and empathetic person for
Mhm.
me to do. I mean, I have to kind of
Yeah.
disassociate, go into my safe space when we do the termination, but it's always for the best. You can't get rid of a poor
Yes.
performer. Yeah.
Well, and you're learning that you need to take care of yourself. And taking care of yourself is taking care of your company. And taking care of your company is making sure that you have top performers and keeping those boundaries strong of what you need and your in the performance of your employees. So, and I think that is very valuable. I'm curious though, because look, I completely agree. Terminating people is a very uncomfortable and difficult thing to do. Have you, because you've been faced with having to deal with this, have you found that there's a best practice in letting people go?
Yeah, there's obviously the legal processes that you have to follow to avoid any kind of litigation after with PIPs and those kind of things. But I feel like we're always treating people very kind and approaching terminations with empathy and kindness is so
Mhm.
important. And with a little bit
Yes.
of advice, there's a lot of times when
Mhm.
people get to say the director level that are just never going to really be able to make it to VP because there's expectations of a VP at Bateman are quite high, and you're expected to be masters of multiple tech domains, be able to build your own portfolios. They have to be extremely strong at what they do on agency side. And then a lot of times I've counseled people to the corporate side because I think that they've run their course at an agency and that they're never really going to be able to handle what you have to be as a VP, which is managing so many multiple parts and clients and knowing when to jump in and when not to, and when to let the team have enough rope to hang themselves with. It just takes a certain person, and usually they need to be homegrown. You bring someone in from the outside at a VP level who hasn't worked either at Bateman Group or with me at Bateman Agency, it's very difficult to adjust. So we've always tried to handle them with a lot of empathy. And some people that we've terminated have turned around and hired us as their agency when they've ended up on the corporate side and followed it.
That speaks
Because
volumes. I love that so much. That speaks
yeah, I think
volumes.
they realized, well, if it was
Yeah.
maybe too hard for me to handle it, I want them in my corner, that kind of thing, because
Yes.
they
Yes.
realize that we do provide, I think, exceptional service and incredible content. I'm so proud of how quickly the teams come together with this second agency and the kind of
What
work that we're doing.
what do you think is most important to you to find in talent when you bring people onto the Bateman Agency?
I think I've been so lucky. There's a lot of karma. Like I know people. I'm not that new agey at all. I don't believe in most of that stuff.
I
But
believe in karma
anyone,
personally.
yeah,
I do.
I think anybody who started a business, and this is now my second one, if they tell you karma hasn't played some kind of a role, or at least putting positive energy into the universe of some kind, and it comes back to you tenfold. I mean, it's really,
Mhm.
I can't tell you about how many times I've been shocked at the talent that's just coming to the door right when I needed it. I mean, it's happened just recently where
Mm.
my head of operations from Bateman Group was working in another agency. I thought for sure she was a lifer there now. And next thing I knew, she called me and said that she was done there and wanted to come back and help me grow the second agency, Shannon Osteyer. So I mean, right when I was so desperate for an ops person because I was handling it on my own after we made a bad hire in operations. So that just happens all the time. And then I sort of had a wish list. I can't solicit obviously from my previous agency, but I had a wish list of certain people that I hope would maybe consider one day
Mhm.
coming over. I wasn't sure when. And the top three have already come over. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? And
Amazing.
yeah, I would never ever, solicit or encourage them. I think there's room for both agencies in the market. I'm not bitter like that. I mean, I want them to succeed and I'm glad that they are. And our focuses are a little bit different. They're definitely a little bit more consumer brand or tech consumer brand focused. I've always been more like DevOps and deep tech. So there's definitely room
Mhm.
for both agents, both of the former Bateman Group and the now Mission North and Bateman Agency in the market. So it's just a different experience. You know what I mean? If people want to bring it back to being small and all the benefits of being back at a boutique, and then they can come here. If they want to work on the big brands with the bigger teams, then there's a Mission North. So I kind of like that
Perfect.
there's multiple options, that
Oh,
have
yeah.
my DNA a little bit in them.
Oh, yeah, I love that. It's such an abundant role, and you have your touch on a couple of different areas that are spreading out there, so it's
Yeah,
fantastic.
I mean, one thing that's tough is the lead building the pipeline, is lead flow, particularly now. I mean, it's so dry. The VCs are sort of becoming a little bit hostile towards PR firms
Why do
and
you
this.
think that is?
Well, it started with interest rates, but now it's become something else entirely. Where I know for our clients that are seeking their Series B or Series C,
Mhm.
what the VCs, even their existing investors, not even talking about bringing on a new one, and even VCs that were very marketing forward, have kind of turned sour on external spend on PR, and I feel a little bit of hostility even for some of our clients that they're getting from their investors about the fact that they have an outside PR firm that they spend money with. But thankfully, a lot of the CEOs that we work with are also very strong and have backbones and are pushing back and saying, no, this is what we need. This is the right agency. The team's doing a great job. It's helping, going to help with our valuation. We're not cutting just for cut, so that you feel better about making an investment in our Series B. But there is definitely one thing that's changed, I think, is the VCs are just holding back from allowing their portfolio companies to make any hires, any kind of like what they deem unnecessary expenses, or actually asking them to even cut their total burn rate by 25% before even coming to the table. It's very unique. It's a
Yeah,
very unique dynamic that I hope stops pretty
yeah,
soon. Yeah.
yeah. Have
Um,
you been using any new tactics? Because you've been dealing with these new things that are happening in the market essentially that you're having to deal with.
no, I haven't, but I have seen some of my competitors beginning to do the cold emailing, and I've always felt that's a little bit, that's the desperation tactic. But I do know my clients get cold emails from even my friendly competitors once in
Yeah.
a while, and I don't, we haven't gotten to that point yet. We're just trying to the clients that we do have really, really happy, and luckily their budgets are all very healthy and sort of waited out.
Mhm,
There was the end of last year, we saw a little bit of a surge, and as I mentioned, we won about half of what we went after, which was not our typical win-loss ratio. It's usually 80-20, but this time it was like fifty,
mhm,
45
mhm,
uh, for last year. So we had some new clients to ramp and some really exciting ones. We won this wonderful video and photo AI company called Topaz Labs that nobody knows about yet, but is all
mhm.
about to. It's like a rocket ship that's just taking off. And
Excited.
we've got a couple of loyal clients that are local, like Checker, the employee background company that's been a wonderful partner. Observe, which is Jeremy Burton's company that's spun out of Snowflake, is on the board of Snowflake, and that have continued to invest in post in cybersecurity, and Times, which is an Irish
Mhm.
company that I love and is a delight to work with. And all of our clients are just so delightful. I feel very.
I admit I'm a little fascinated with AI, that AI company that you mentioned that's everyone's gonna know about. Is it a service that a lot of people are gonna be using? Is that why?
Well, they just have a better tool than what OpenAI currently offers for photographs and videos, but mainly for restoration of old fully digital
Ooh,
photographs. And
interesting.
yeah, so it's like we just got on a rocket, and they're talking to the New York Times this week, and I mean, there's already been like business press inquiries that have been inbound, and so we're just helping them to operationalize their PR because still a small company based in Dallas, and they weren't prepared for this attention because they've
Mhm.
had their tool out for longer than the other players, and
Mm,
it's really quite popular with prosumer photographers and that kind of crowd. So we're going to help them just go enterprise and build a whole
great,
program from scratch. Those are the best kind of clients, the
great.
ones that come to us when they're generally Series B or C, so they can afford the full program, and we can help them put them on the map and on the
Mhm,
road to market leadership and even to IPO. Those are the ones that we do best with.
mhm,
But right now, what we're seeing in the pipeline too is a lot of already publicly traded clients where they have more control over how they spend their money and they're dissatisfied with their current agency. And that's always a little tougher for us as a boutique because the bigger agencies tend to fare better when a brand that's established wants to
mhm.
make a switch.
Yeah.
I'm lucky we worked with New Relic for 4 years, which I considered a great turnaround story. When they came to us, they really needed to turn around perceptions about the brand, especially with developers. So that's a specialty of ours is the DevOps sector and developer driven marketing engineering led brands. So that felt really good. They were acquired by private equity. And that's when we brought on Observe, one of their up and coming competitors. So we can do the same thing for that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
very cool. Very cool. Well, I know we touched on the fact that it's been a difficult year in the PR industry over the past year and whatnot. Which is why I believe that a lot of times when you go through difficult times, it's really easy to um, there's some negativity or what have you. And so I'm really a big proponent in proactively feeding the mind in positive ways. I'm curious if you have anything to share of anything that you may have either read, watched, or listened to that positively impacted you that could positively impact other people as well.
The sort of about life or management or leadership.
Anything. It doesn't even have to
I'm
be,
all
it could
ears.
be anything. It could be anything that just, was positive to you. So, had an impact. Like it's just something that resonated and you remember. You know those things that stick
Yeah,
with you?
I have
Yeah.
recently. I was reading James Baldwin, the celebrated author who
Yeah.
I didn't really know as much about in college. Black author, gay, of course. I went to a Catholic university. It was probably not going to be at the top of the summer reading list. But,
Probably.
so, discovering James Baldwin later in life, and reading his books, his oeuvre, has been amazing for me because he's always so optimistic and positive about that love will win out, and not sexual love. He means like love of kindness.
Mhm.
And even when the stories are about the migration from the South, the Black migration to the North, or Jim Crow, or, what I mean? Like these really difficult times in history, but his stories always end with these optimistic sort of love will win out if we just care for each other and show. Oh, I'm going to cry already. But having been through some difficult times myself, I have really latched onto his ethos about how, at the end of the day, the hatred, love conquers hatred. And
Right. Love leads all. Yes. Lead with love always. I completely agree. It's kind of,
yeah, everybody read all his
yeah.
books, and
What would you start with? Which one would you start with if someone has never read one?
well, depending on where you're coming from, Giovanni's Room is a great, great one if as a gay man reading that, his 1956 novel Giovanni's Room, was really moving to me. But I think in terms of like society and race, there's Go Tell It on the Mountain and Notes of a Native Son. Go Tell It on the Mountain is his most well-known
Mhm.
book and first book about the Great Migration. So yeah, those are probably where I'd start.
I love good news suggestions. So thank you for sharing that with me. You
What's
know,
crazy is they read very, like, modern, you know what I mean? Like, the things that he describes are as contemporary and timeless as they were earlier in the 20th century.
mhm,
It's yeah, so that's kind of one thing that makes me hopeful given what we might be facing in the next election cycle.
right.
And
Oh gosh.
yeah.
Giving me the shivers. Uh,
And the repeal of Roe versus Wade, those things really be even a gay man. I mean, obviously, I am empathetic towards what women are facing now with the reproductive rights being taken away, and I know we're next on the list, on the hit list, where the Supreme Court is set up. So, one thing that I really try to encourage with the whole staff at Bateman Agency is universal awareness of things going on in the world. There's still a lot of mass shootings, but that was one cause that I really tried to build awareness from, and with Bateman Group, and we donated money to common sense gun laws legislation and things like that. And now there's so many things,
yes.
the staff stays intellectually curious. And then also, I've always been extremely passionate about technology and its evolution over the years. I can't say that I've mastered AI and what's going on there, but I love to sit down with the team and tell them about, before the whole PC evolution,
Mhm.
back when there was microcomputers, or when I started in the industry, it was just the dawn of the PC era. We work with Paul Gillen and David Strom and some old, trade reporters that have been around as long as I have.
Mhm.
And we'll take the staff, the junior staff, mid-level staff, through the whole history of back when people used to be embarrassed to say they worked at Apple. When I first got
Right.
here in 98, things like that, they're so shocking to them, or before digital music, or just how
Mm.
we worked in PR before inter-office email even, like, yeah, we just had facts, and we tried to keep them realizing where we fall, that this was a continuum, you know what I mean? And
Mhm.
that we're all connected, and that we might be, some of us might be in our 50s, but we remember a time when you couldn't even send email within your own offers. You know what I mean? Everything was FedExed or whatever, and we still got the job done, So the pace is, we just picked up, but I think one thing that's been consistent is there'll always be a need for good strategic communication firms, for tech
Mhm.
companies to partner with. That's,
Mhm.
while there's been ups and downs, there's always bounce back. And I think
Yes.
San Francisco will too, much as it's pretty dystopian in certain areas. And They talk about the doom loop.
Yeah.
I've just seen it bounce back from worse. You know what I
Good,
mean?
good, good.
And
It's
I
always a cycle. Thank you for sharing that because you know what? We're always in a cycle. Yes, you've seen it bounce back from worse. It'll bounce back again, just like anything
Yeah, the
that goes
goal is
down.
to
It comes.
keep your team in place so you can benefit the most from
Yeah.
when it does bounce
Yeah.
back. We'll be back to time where we're turning away the companies and trying to find people and fighting over staff. It always does. I looked at these blog posts I wrote for Artie Shaw at PR Week, like in 2009 or 2008, right when that housing recession hit, which that one was hard because it didn't feel like our fault. The dot-com
Mhm.
one felt like maybe that was our fault. A little bit large. It needed to
That's
be
the one.
drained.
Nothing to do with us.
Yeah, but, I remember writing something there that I it could be republished today, and it was sort of how to, hold on to your employees for the rebound, you know what I mean?
Right.
And, you're doing the right things because at that point, there was a lot of layoffs just like today,
Mhm.
and people were treating their staff a little bit more like disposable than they should, and
Mhm.
I was grateful that, we at that point, my Bateman Group all took pay cuts and then held the team together until things started to get better, even 6 months later. Everything's
Mhm.
temporary,
Yeah.
right?
Yes. Yes. It's
Uh,
an important reminder for everyone. Everything's temporary. So this has been great. I've loved the conversation and I've loved that so much of the messaging has come back to that kindness, empathy, the lead with love, if you will, which I feel has been one of the superpowers I've kind of developed in life, like leading with love. What before you go, I'd love to know what is one of your personal superpowers or one that you've developed over time?
Um, I think it's a combination of there's not a word for it, but like kindness, generosity, and empathy all in one
Mhm.
sort of
There should be a
integrated
word for
package.
it, right?
Yeah, I wish I could think of one, but that and I've always been the type to really I mean, almost to mama bear level, defend my team against clients that I thought were treating us unfairly. I'm very quick to resign clients that are in any way disrespectful to my team, and I think that's one of the things that helped with retention the most is they always know Fred has their back, that they can make mistakes, and I'm still going to side with them. Not with the client. And I'm never going to force anybody to work with a client and a lot of them are shocked when they see how quick I am to terminate them because they think that all PR firms are desperate for, especially in a down economy, we're all desperate for business. But it doesn't matter what market it is. I can't stand to watch a CMO pick apart a member of the team. It's like we succeed as a team, we take accolades as a team, we take failures as a team. To pick on an individual is just a bullying tactic that I
Mhm.
I recommend.
Thank you for that. I think that's important. And it sounds to me like you've developed some boundary superpowers as well. So kudos on that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Okay. People tell me that, at times I can be a little bit too quick. This is kind of a funny story to end on, but we were pitching a company in Boston, a cybersecurity company that we really wanted, and the people were super nice. And it was during the first time we were using Zoom to pitch, and
Mhm.
it took a while to get used to. So while we were presenting, I noticed that the CEO kept putting us on no video, and that the CMO was what it looked like was playing with his dog with a plastic bag. And
Mhm.
and it turned out that the CEO was having just connectivity problems and the CMO was trying to quiet his barking dog so he could hear us. But I immediately was like, stop the presentation. I was like, we're not going to continue on if you're not going to pay attention to us. I couldn't see of that. And I was like, "Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I didn't realize what you were trying to do," But sometimes I can over-index.
I can so relate to that because my dog starts barking quite often. I was like,
Yeah, yeah. Well,
"Ah."
it's like, it's funny because it never dawned on me they were trying to prepare themselves to better. I thought they were ignoring us, or that we weren't important, and it just was a misunderstanding in the early
Yeah.
Zoom days. Now it's interesting because we prefer to pitch over Zoom, even though we have office space that I'm in right now, because it's a little bit easier to focus the message and the person who's
Mhm.
supposed to be talking when you heard is. So
Mhm.
it's changed a lot, but yeah, I was a little bit too aggressive. And while I feel I've earned my sort of moments, when I feel disrespected, I got to learn to rein that in and not always assume the worst
Yeah.
sometimes of people that are outside our circle.
Yeah.
But I also think the one thing I'm very proud of is my relationships with my competitors. Even the civil, difficult relationship that I maintain
Mhm.
with my former business partners is still something that, I've had to work at. But the competitors in this industry, especially in the San Francisco market, where people are a little bit more open to collaborating and have what kept me going. When I thought I couldn't keep going, Kathleen Greathouse at Highwire,
Sure.
Charles
It's great.
Truba, David
Love
Parkinson,
them. Yeah.
you know what I mean? Like there's just people that have been there to remind me that you know, built an amazing agency once and I can do it again.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Oh, God bless those people in our lives. You know?
Yeah, yeah,
So,
and Robin Belanti at Off Leash, and the list goes on and on. Julie
yeah.
Carbo. Not everybody plays nice in the sandbox with the other agencies. I never really understood why. I've tried to bring people together doing salary surveys,
I
and
love that.
we do in-person meetings at the Penthouse again here at the Hams building. Now that I'm back in the office
Yeah.
building,
Look, it's an abundant world. It's a very abundant world. It's an abundant industry. There's a lot of opportunity for everybody. There's no reason to not have great relationships amongst all of your peers.
that's the one word I was looking for earlier, and I couldn't find was
Yeah.
I've always taken an abundance mindset to the market rather than a scarcity one.
Yes.
And I think that that's helped me stay sane, but also helped me to forge really tight and reciprocal relationships, mutually beneficial friendships with other agency owners. Not everyone, there's definitely the ones that are a little bit too competitive to open up the kimono, but I'm as radically transparent with them as I am with
Yeah.
my senior management team. When things are going well, I'm transparent with that. When they're not, I'm very honest about that too. And not everybody's always comfortable with that. And I get it. I sit and be friendly with the ones that are more reserved or don't want to show the cards. I get
Yeah.
it.
I
But
love
that
it
doesn't,
personally. I'm
yeah.
super transparent as well. I like this. I just share. I'm like, this is what's going on. We're just so much. There's so much we can learn from each other when we're just honest, when we're authentic, and then really, I find when you're authentic, that's when you find the best relationships, the best connections, because it's kind of like you find your people, really. And
And this is our tribe, especially starting an agency by myself. I was desperate for mentorship early
yeah,
on. I didn't know even like whether it be a C corp or an S corp. There's so many things I didn't know. I was a little bit stupid and naive, and you got to be a little self deluded
that's
to
gonna
start
happen. Yeah,
to 33 with just like 10 years in the business. I had only been in San Francisco 5 years and put your name on the door and think that just assume it's going to succeed.
yeah.
It
Being
took
okay with not knowing and jumping is definitely one of the contributing factors to people who are successful. It really is. Sometimes you just gotta you just gotta be like, okay, I'm just gonna jump and I'm gonna figure it out. It's
And you have
okay.
to just keep
Yeah.
going, just keep going
Yeah.
and take it month to month. And if you persist, eventually, I know this happened with Bateman Group, and hoping that the same thing will happen with everything's happening at 3 times the pace with Bateman Agency that it took with Bateman Group, and that makes sense because the brand is obviously out there already and a little bit more established. I'm wiser, and so is the rest of my senior management team. But I'm always shocked at how we're hitting milestones that took me 13 years or 12 years with Bateman Group, which is around the time of really hockey stick. And that was just the market really taking off at the time. Me and my management team matured and we're in our 40s and we were prepared for it. Do you know what I mean?
Mhm.
To
Yeah.
take advantage of it. If it had happened at any other time, the moon's just aligned. And from 2013 to 2020, we just were, we just zoomed to the top of the heap and
Yeah.
stayed there. And I think they've done a good job maintaining their size with the new brand. And I give them a lot of credit for the work with Zoom and Canva. They've got great brands, and I'm very proud of that. I would like that for this new agency to
Yes.
experience in a train ride. And the
Me
next time
too.
a little bit more.
So let's, Fred, here's to the moons aligning for you, for me, and for everyone out there who's listening. That's what we're hoping for us all.
Yeah.
Thank you.
This too shall pass. This
Yes.
is a bad
Yes.
quarter right now, but things can only get better. And
Yeah.
so
Thank you so much. This has been such a great conversation. I really appreciate you coming on and joining me on the Career Wanderlust podcast.
thanks, Julie.
Thank you for joining us on the Career Wanderlust podcast. If you find value in learning from others, give us a like and subscribe. If you're looking to grow your communications, marketing, public relations, or sales and biz dev team with the best talent and quickly, check us out at paradigmstaffing.com and submit a request. We are wishing you a most successful and fulfilling career. Until next time.